Hello again, and welcome back to the Racing Writers Podcast. As always, I'm Kelly Crandall, your host. My guest this week is Ricky Mast, the son of former NASCAR driver Rick Mast. Ricky and now his dad are the host of Mast Cast, another popular podcast here on iTunes and, well, anywhere I guess you can find podcasts and that you enjoy listening to them. Ricky is the guest, and I have to say right off the bat, you're going to hear us reference it quite a few times. This was the second interview we had to record because my technology illiterate self messed up our first recording. When we did it through Skype, it was the first time I was learning programs to record through Skype, and it recorded me, but nothing on Ricky's end, so we had to do it again. I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate him being a good sport. What a great guy. Really fun to talk to. I mean, we talked for about an hour, and man, we could have kept going. So an hour today, we talked an hour last week. It was a blast. So again, I can't thank him enough. A wonderful conversation. Some of the stuff you're going to hear is how the podcast came to be, talking, working with his dad, the memories that the two of them had to tell stories, and just everything Ricky's got going on in life. He's not involved in racing, but he grew up in the sport, so he's got a lot of stories to tell. He still loves watching racing today. We talk a little bit of the good old days versus what we have today on the racetrack. So Ricky Mast is the guest, and I want to get to that because, again, it's a great long conversation. I don't want to take up too much time. If you've left a review, I appreciate that. Yep, here I am going in my spiel. If you haven't left a rating and review, please do. The podcast is growing. It's been so much fun. I've got a lot of great interviews coming down the line. One next week that I'm really, really excited about. And since that interview was recorded correctly, I will share it with you. Next week is Liz Allison. I talked to Liz for the 25th anniversary of Davey Allison's passing. We talk his Hall of Fame induction, his career, just everything Davey. I'm so excited for that one. That's next week coming down the line. But let's get to Ricky. As I promised, great guy. He did it twice. It's a great conversation. It was worth it. So thank you, Ricky. Here is Ricky Mast on the Racing Writers Podcast. I'm actually going to do it a proper way this time. I'm going to start the show with a proper introduction, which I normally don't do with my guests, but since we're recording this week and I want to get it out this week, I figure, you know what, since he's doing it twice, I'm going to properly introduce Mr. Ricky Mast. So, Ricky Mast, welcome to the Racing Writers Podcast. We are recording this the day before the 4th of July, and I'm going to put it on the record. Thank you again for this is round 2, so thank you again for doing it.
I'm back for the first time, and I'm happy to be here, Kelly.
Well, I appreciate it. So, for people who didn't see Twitter, we did record this last week. It did not work, and now we are doing it again. So I appreciate it, and I want to jump in. Just tell everybody kind of who you are and what you're up to, because if they follow you on social media, they know you are Rick Mast's son. You've got your own podcast, but I want to start with who you are just in general. I see Ricky Mast on Twitter, and it says he works for the Braves, and you're always tweeting about baseball. So what's going on there?
Yeah, that's the quick summary of it. I work for Major League Baseball and get to work with the Atlanta Braves, work with the digital marketing team, the social media crew there, and it's a dream gig. Of course, I love NASCAR. That's the sport I grew up in, but baseball is kind of my first true love as far as my fandom goes. So now I get to work in it with my favorite team that I've loved since I was a little kid, and these two worlds kind of came together for me at age 8, I guess it was. My dad's first season in the Cup Series was 91, which was also, for any baseball fans out there, that was also the year of the Atlanta Braves. It was the worst to first season, where they'd been kind of a cellar dweller, last place team for a number of years, and then that season was the year they kind of put it all together and made it all the way to the World Series. And so back in those days, and again, this is obviously pre-internet and pre-social media, all that good stuff, and pre-every game being broadcast. You know, every baseball team's every game is broadcast somewhere now on television. Well, back in those days, that wasn't always the case, with the exception of the Atlanta Braves. They were owned at that time by Ted Turner, who owned TBS. And so all the games were pretty much on TBS. So wherever we were traveling each weekend, didn't matter if we were in Darlington, North Wilkesboro, Michigan, Daytona, wherever you name it, whatever hotel we were staying in, and yes, we would stay in hotels. This was also pre-motorhome days. So whatever hotel we were staying in, we'd get home from the racetrack, and I could watch the Braves on TBS. And then there was this connection where a lot of pit crew members in the garage area, I mean, everybody's pretty much based in Charlotte or somewhere in the southeast. and everybody was kind of, if they liked baseball, they were Braves fans. So I was around it, just the kind of the osmosis of being around people who were in the NASCAR world, but also followed Braves baseball. And at that time, there were a lot of connections, and there still are really, between the team and NASCAR, in that, you had players that would show up to NASCAR races that were NASCAR fans, and coaches, and vice versa. So my love for baseball kind of, appropriately enough, started through growing up in NASCAR. And so somehow or another, this is the Cliff Notes version that all led me to working in baseball.
Well, I was gonna say, why was it that you didn't get it? You didn't follow dad into racing. I mean, is there a simple answer? I mean, you obviously love sports in
Yeah.
general, but was getting behind the wheel, or did you ever drive anything? Maybe even go kart even? Why was there no following dad into racing?
Well, okay, so two things. I did dabble, when I was a teenager, in go-kart racing and mini cup racing, little mini stock cars. Did the go-kart thing for a year and did the mini cup thing for a year. I had fun with the go-karts the first year. And then, I don't know, a few races in, like I won my first race one week, which I had an illegal motor, which I still feel bad about that, but I think I should have won. I mean, I guess it's the whole, if you're not cheating, you're not trying thing. But I still feel like, if I could go back in time, I would have liked to have tried to win one week legally. But whatever, that's another thing.
You're definitely a child of the generation of the old school racer.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as far as I was concerned, I was getting my tail whooped every week by these other guys, and so I was just like, well, they got to be cheating, so I got to cheat too. So had a little work done to the motor, and lo and behold, next week I won. So, but anyway, so I won my first race, and then the very next race in practice, the next weekend, I had a wreck that ended up sending me to the hospital, and suddenly it wasn't all that much fun anymore. But I still did it for another year. But ultimately, none of that. I mean, that kind of dissuaded me from it, the trip to the hospital. But ultimately, the real reason I'm not a race car driver is, when it comes down to it, I'm just dumb when it comes to mechanical stuff and cars. I can change my oil in my car. I can change a flat tire. That's about it. I mean, that's the. It's funny. My dad and I are alike in a lot of ways, but all of the mechanical knowledge and skills and intuition and all that, and the engineering stuff, the scientific stuff, I inherited none of that from him. I did much better in history and English, and I was terrible at science and math. So if that tells you anything, so it was pretty apparent early on. I had no business being a race car driver. That's for sure.
So you got into baseball. It's really funny. I Googled you the other day because I was curious what would come up. And the second thing that came up, the first was your Twitter. And I was like, well, I follow him on Twitter. I don't need to click on that. So let's go to the second thing. The second thing, I don't know if you've ever Googled yourself, but if you haven't, here's what comes up. So your Twitter comes up, and then the second thing is a news story from the Roanoke Times from about, I think it was 2012. And the headline, which made me click on it, was Ricky Mast evicted from the MLB Fan Cave. So just kind of tell everybody what that was again. Just give more insight into your non-racing background, and again what you're doing in sports and baseball. Because I think I know a little bit of what that MLB Fan Cave was. It used to be a very popular thing. Correct me if I'm wrong, where sports fans would get to watch baseball games essentially. So just kind of give more insight into what that was and how you were involved in it.
Yeah, so that was, at the time, I think it lasted for 4 seasons. At the time, the MLB Fan Cave was Major League Baseball's quote-unquote social media hub. It was really just, it was kind of their effort to go viral, right? Well, really just to go viral. So at the time, the deal was there was a contest that they would have for it every year, and you would apply, and you would have to write some essays. But the biggest thing was you'd film a 2-minute video explaining why you thought you were one of the most entertaining baseball fans in the country. And if you got selected, you would get to go live in New York City for the summer. And they had, I think it was like, it was on 4th and Broadway. I'm trying to remember how much space it was. It was like 10,000 square feet or something. It was a huge 3-story space. The old Tower Records there in 4th and Broadway in New York City that they had taken over and renovated into kind of this giant, like, baseball fans playground. And the center of it was just walls full of TVs. And the basic idea was that if you made it there, you would spend your summer watching every single Major League Baseball game of the season as it happened. The regular season, I believe the number is, it's just over 2,400, I believe, not counting the postseason. And then you watch them all as they're going on live, and then you tweet about it, Facebook, blog, whatever, right? And then you're also trying to make videos. Again, this was MLB's attempt to go viral. So every day before the games would start, ball players from opposing teams that were in town to play the Mets or the Yankees would come by, or celebrities or bands would come by, and we would film just funny little videos with them, and again, try to go viral. So I was fortunate enough. I think it was like 22,000 people applied the year that I applied, and I was fortunate enough to be one of the 9 that they selected to go. So I got to live in New York City for the summer. Now, the evicted part was, it was also set up kind of reality show style, where throughout
of course.
of course, right? That's what this is, 2012 especially. So it still goes on today, the reality show stuff. So I made it most.
Yeah, we
of the
live
way.
in the reality show era nowadays.
Oh yeah, absolutely, we definitely do. So I was willing to do whatever to break in, and so I made it most of the way. Didn't quite make it till the end of the season, but I definitely, it was the experience of a lifetime. It changed my life. Just the people I got to meet and the things I got to do as a result of that, and then how it set me up after that to eventually break in full time into sports and baseball. It was an incredible, just dreamlike experience to get to. I could never live in New York City full time, but man, they put us up in apartments in the middle of Soho. And that they paid for, and then we just literally 7 days a week got to live this dream job of going in, meeting fascinating people, watching sports, and getting paid for it. It was just incredible. And so that is the MLB Fan Cave in a nutshell, and that's the evicted part.
Well, I kind of cut you off there, so just explain how the eliminations work. Like, what got you evicted in a sense?
They didn't really, like, there wasn't like a tribal council or like a voting process or like a game. It was more of just the powers that be that were running everything were kind of, I think they'd set it up reality show style at the beginning, and then I'm not sure, and then they were just kind of figuring it out as they went along, and they didn't really give us any specific reason. I mean, the idea was, while you were there, you were trying to do as many things you could to contribute and be, create content, and I feel like I did that during my time there, and I honestly don't know, but I will say this: I have nothing but good things to say about not only the people I was in there with, but the people that made those decisions and brought us there. I mean, I've nothing but good things. I mean, I certainly didn't feel like I was done wrong. That's for sure. I mean, goodness gracious, what all did I do? I sang and played a Hootie and the Blowfish parody song for Darius Rucker right next to him. I danced half naked in front of Kate Upton, which is as horrifying as it sounds. I just did all these crazy things that were it was so much fun. So it was, the reality show part of it never bothered me all that much. I wanted to just make it as far as I could, and then when it was over, it was over, and that's how I approached it. And honestly, as soon as it was over, I came back home and started figuring out the next thing, and eventually it landed me here.
So let's talk about the Braves a little bit before we jump into the podcast work, because of course we'll talk about that. But you do work for the Braves, and they're off to a hot start. We did talk about this last week. It's funny. This is going to be like a lot of deja vu, but hey, it gives you a chance to kind of maybe cut some things out that maybe you didn't like, or just get used to talking again. So, but talk a little bit about Braves. I mean, are they for real? I know I told you last week I got a boyfriend, Chris, who is a big Braves fan. We went down to the stadium, or the old stadium, a couple years ago. But just from your perspective, how do they look? How does this team look?
Well, first of all, as I told you last week, if he's a Braves fan, then you've got a winner there. So we need to lock that up. Although you took him to the stadium, so he's got. You know what? Y'all just both need to lock that up right now. So let's put that aside. But no, moving on. So yeah, the Braves this year, they've been. If you looked at the coming into the season this year. Now I'm always like, and people I work with will tell you this. I use the term Pete positive. That's me. I'm always like, I always believe, no matter what the team looks like coming into the season, I always believe, we got a chance to do something special this year, right? And obviously that's not always going to be true. But I always feel that way, and I felt that way this year. And this year, so far, it looks like it might be coming true. If you looked at the professional prognosticators out there and the people who make predictions and preseason rankings and all that stuff, nobody had the Braves in the postseason this year. And listen, we literally just hit the halfway point of the season the other day, so anything can happen from here on out. I've seen many teams and many sports collapse or not play as well in the second half of the season and ultimately miss the playoffs. But the first half of the season for the Braves has been one of the most fun we've had in this with this franchise in a number of years. They're young, they're exciting, they're fun. Just last night, as a matter of fact, maybe the best win we've had all year. The Braves beat the Yankees on the road in extra innings at Yankee Stadium. Our young phenom Ronald Acuna hit the home run to win the game, and it's I feel really, really good. Listen, again, anything can happen. I'm not one to say, oh, we're a lock at this point, but we're pretty much been in first place the whole first half, best record in the National League right now, and to the preseason predictions and rankings and all that stuff, I would just say we've got a lot of young guys on this team, and nobody tells these kids, and some of them are 20 years old, nobody told them they're not supposed to be good and they're not supposed to be playing this well, and they're playing better than anybody expected, and it's just been so much fun. And this job is fun no matter how the team on the field is playing, but man, when they're playing well, it's exponentially that much more fun. I mean, I think that carries into any sport. If you're covering NASCAR or you're working with a NASCAR team, I mean, of course, it's going to be more fun if you're winning races or running well, and that's the same with us. So I feel really good about the Braves and where they're at, and not just for this season, but for the foreseeable future. We went through the quote unquote rebuilding phase over the last few years. The worst of that is definitely completely over now, and now we should be set up for a nice few years here with the Atlanta Braves.
I've heard the phrase rebuilding phase a few times from Chris and his friends.
Yeah, and that's every now and then that happens. I mean, at the end of the 2014 season, the powers that be at the time looked at everything and said, this is our farm system is at least per all the rankings one of the near the bottom of the list in baseball, and the big league team just hadn't, as was constructed, couldn't quite break through, and so they decided, well, it's time to hit the reset button, and that can be painful in any sport if you decide, okay, we've got to rebuild here, restart, and redo some things. You have to trade away your big league talent to get younger talent that you then have to develop, and more importantly, you have to be patient on it and wait for it to develop, and that's what we've been doing the last. I got here in 2015. That was basically the first full season of kind of hitting the reset button with the Braves, and it's been a grind to get here, but it's been so worth it. And now that we're just at the very beginning of seeing kind of the fruits of all the labor that's gone on with the franchise over the last few years, it's just been, it's so much fun. It's like I cannot believe that we're halfway through the season already. It just seemed, I mean, we started. Oh, gosh, when was the first game? March 28th, 27th, somewhere in there. That was opening day, and I'm not even kidding you. This is not me blowing smoke here. It literally feels like that was just the other night. It's like the first 3 months have completely flown by, and that's a result of this team playing so well and it just being so much fun. It's such a great atmosphere.
So again, Chris and I, a couple friends, we came down to the old stadium before it closed. As I told you, I wanted to get him down there for his birthday. We made a whole trip of it. But you guys got a new stadium. What's kind of been the upside? What are the positives of why people should come to the new stadium? Convince me, sell me on why I should bring Chris down there and let him see the new stadium.
Well, you could come here for a weekend of games, and you could actually, that wouldn't even be enough. I was going to say you could try different restaurants at every meal, but no, you probably need a week at this point. Honestly, the way it's growing. I mean, I'm up front here. I'm biased because not only do I work here, but I live here also. I live in an apartment here in the Battery, Atlanta, which is the development that SunTrust Park, our ballpark, is contained in. The stadium itself is state of the art. There's not a bad seat in the house. It's a beautiful place. And more importantly, the atmosphere around the ballpark, that we've got our own kind of little. It's almost like our own little miniature town here. It's a Braves. It's like Braves Town, USA here. And there's what's great to me is I see people, even when the team is not in town, there's still people here in the Battery hanging out, going to restaurants, going to bars. People are bringing their kids out to our plaza area to play because it's its own little park. There's the Roxy Theater next door it's part of the Battery, and there's always concerts going on there. I mean, there's always something going on here. It's amazing. Well, just this past weekend, so the team was out of town this weekend. Saturday night at the ballpark, we had Zach Brown Band, and then Sunday night we had Def Leppard and Journey, which I went to and had a good time. So there's literally always something going on here, and the game days when the Braves are in town are just that much better because you could show up if the game's not till 7:30. You could show up if you wanted to, you could show up for breakfast. I mean, there's breakfast spots here, and you could hang out all day and go see all the different places here. We got shops. It's I'll tell you this, some other opposing teams' writers that have come in here and seen this place for the first time. There's one team in particular that's, I can't remember if they're either they might be in the process of building a new ballpark or they're thinking about it. Anyways, from what I understood, they are looking at modeling what they want to do with their new place after what we have here in Atlanta. And the biggest compliment to me was I heard some of the beat reporters from that team just kind of talking to each other in the press box here, and they said, man, if our team builds something that's even halfway as good as this, that would really be something. That to hear other people come in and just see it that don't have to have any they don't have any biased opinion about it. They're just saying how they feel. To hear them be impressed by it, that to me is a validating feeling for what we've got here.
Well, Chris is always looking for, he's always saying we need to do stuff, we need to take trips. So maybe once our racing season is over, we'll look at the schedule and get down there. And if we do, we'll have to meet up with you because I owe you dinner again. I keep mentioning it for talking about the same thing twice in the span of a couple days.
Listen, I can talk Braves baseball and NASCAR all day, every day. I have no problems with talking about that. We can talk about it every day as far as I'm concerned.
Maybe you and I will just have to keep chatting. Every so often we'll just jump on here and talk amongst ourselves.
That works for me. And hey, whenever you guys come here, again, I work here and live here. I'm pretty much, at some point, I'm hoping that if this does become its own little town, they'll just name me the mayor because I pretty much am in this bubble constantly, and I like it. I like being here. So whenever y'all show up, I'll be here.
Well, we'll make something happen, but let's jump into it. Who would have ever thought that Rick Mast, former NASCAR driver, and now his son have a podcast? So Mast Cast is becoming quite the little venture here. How did this get started? How did Rick Mast become podcaster?
Well, it's a couple of things. One, before I was in my current line of work, I was doing local television and radio, mainly radio back in Virginia, and I always just enjoyed the process, like producing a show, being on a show, being on mic. Like I just enjoyed it, and I missed that a little bit, and I wanted to find a way to get back into it. Not even necessarily as a money making venture or anything, just because I like doing it, and I wanted to find a new way to do it. So obviously, podcasting is a great outlet for that. But then beyond that, and this is probably the more important thing, my dad's been retired since '02, and he's got such a good personality. He's very funny, very witty, and also he has a lot to say about the sport and where it's been, where it is, where it's going. And I just felt like, we've kind of felt like, when I say we, my family, it's like, man, I don't want to say wasting your talent, but it's like you got so much to say. Like somebody should be hearing this. Like I think, or at least if nothing else, then I think fans would enjoy. Folks out there in the NASCAR world would enjoy hearing what your take on things is, or just hearing your stories. And so in the off season, I just threw it out there to him, like, what do you think about us doing a NASCAR podcast? And he responded, what's a podcast? So then I had to get through that first and explain to him what a podcast was. And then as soon as I did that, he was like, all right, yeah, let's do it. So he was on board right away, and we aimed to get started at Daytona or during Daytona week, and that's what we did. And it's been so much fun ever since. I honestly didn't know what the reception would be, if we would suck, or if it would not get, if nobody would listen, or whatever. I figured the first week we put it out there on social media, we'd have enough folks checking it out the first go around that if we didn't mess it up bad enough, we'd hopefully keep some of them around for each week, and that's what's happened. We've actually looking at the numbers of it, well, listen, we're not setting any records or anything, but the amount of people that are listening to us every week per the stats and numbers I've looked at, it's really been really been heartwarming to me. But more importantly, I think it's a testament to Dad and his personality and his takes on things, and also his stories from the old days. I mean, I think that's really why people are listening, why people can continue to listen, and hopefully why they'll continue to listen in the future.
How long did it take you to come up with the name?
That was 1 to 2 seconds. That was pretty much that might have been the very first thing I even thought of with the whole thing was just, well, Mast Cast. And I'm either, with me, when I'm naming stuff, I either want alliteration or I just want something that's simple and rhymes. So didn't get the alliteration, but I got the rhyming. And that was the easiest part of the whole process, selecting a name.
Yeah, it's quite brilliant. So what goes into your prep work? Is it you making notes? How much does your dad do? Or is it, swing by the seat of your pants and let's hit record and see what happens?
It's a mixture of, I only usually make 4 or 5 notes, and they aren't even complete. It's just maybe a sentence a piece, if that. And that's pretty much it. And then when we hook up on Skype or whatever, which, by the way, I'm getting ready to go. I'm leaving tomorrow to go to Virginia to spend some time with the family, and then we're heading to the beach together. So we're at the next couple episodes of Mast Cast will actually be our first couple in person, not counting, or where we're recording together in person. We're not counting our live show we did at Richmond a couple months ago. So, but usually it's just when we first hook up via Skype, I'll just say, hey, I was thinking we talk about this, and this, and does that sound good to you? And he's like, yep, okay, that sounds good. And then I hit record and we go. So it's not a lot of, I will say the first episode or two I did take a lot of notes and tried to map it all out in pretty great detail, which is well and good. But with us, and particularly with him, it just works better for us to just we'll start with a couple basic things, then just see where it goes. And Dad is definitely a talker. I mean, all I have to do with him is just kind of cue him up or just lead him into something, and then he'll just go. And then 15 minutes later, who knows where we've ended up, but it's usually fun to take the ride.
So, one of the things I've said about you two is of course the relationship is already there because it's father and son. But I know I've said this on Twitter, I've said it to you before. You guys have such a good rapport, like just that natural conversation. So it's going to be interesting, and I want to know when you guys now record this in person, if that, you'll have to tell us how that goes when now you guys are face to face again, but there's a microphone in, with you two. Do you see what I'm saying? Like how will that go the next couple weeks? Like it's going to be fun to see how the podcast, if it sounds any different than just you guys doing it over Skype.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see. Again, the truthful answer is I don't know. I mean, for all I know, it could be like worse somehow. I don't think it will be, but I honestly, like, I'm very much looking forward to it. I mean, beyond just being able to hang out with the family, being able to sit there and look at each other. I think, I'll be honest with you, the very first we recorded, before we did the first episode, I was back home in Virginia for a little while, and we recorded kind of like a test episode, basically, and that was in person. And that went pretty well, but it felt, I'm sure it didn't feel awkward to him, because I don't think, my dad, I don't think ever feels awkward in any situation. The man has no shame. I'm quite the opposite. So it felt a little awkward to me, but now that we've been doing this and it's a thing, and we know we've got people that enjoy the show and listen every week, I don't suspect there'll be any of that awkwardness. I think it'll be fun, to be honest with you. So I'm really looking forward to trying out. Now, if people listen to the show, they know we always aim and say that we're going to try to get a show out on Monday or Tuesday, and it's just unfortunately our schedules. This time of year, I'm working 7 days a week, and he's got plenty of stuff that keeps him busy. We still usually try to hook up on Monday or Tuesday. This week, we could have hooked up yesterday or today. This is Tuesday. Sorry, getting my days mixed up. But we're purposely waiting this week. We have a good reason. We're wanting to record this one in person. So, yeah, I'm very much looking forward to that. And yeah, it'll be fun. I mean, it's something different. It's always good to change it up a little bit.
No, I think it's going to be great. Like I said, I think if anything, maybe it'll be more fun, if that makes sense. You guys will really be able to play off each other and go back and forth.
Yeah, I think so. And I'll tell you another thing, and this is just a sneak peek. I know one thing I want to do once the off season gets here, and when I'm home for Christmas, is I'm interested in doing like getting the whole family on a show at some point. I don't know if my mom will be down for that. She's not a big fan of microphones and cameras and all that, but I bet my twin sisters will be. So I think that's one thing we'll explore in the off season too, is getting more members of the Mast clan on there. And then another thing we want to do while we're talking about bringing other people in is I definitely want to do some theme shows where we get maybe another father-son combination or father just child combination from NASCAR. Maybe one of the guys dad raced against and then his son or daughter. I think it would be fun to do some theme episodes like that. So, we've pretty much stuck to our same formula to this point, which is great. And we're not even to 20 episodes yet, I don't think. So it's worked well so far. But I am looking forward to. I mean, when we're recording in person, that'll be slight change in things, but also just trying some different things. Start having some guests on. I mean, it's the fact that we've only recorded 17 or 18 episodes with minimal promotion. Literally, we pretty much just tweet it once from we each tweet it from our personal Twitter accounts once a week, and that's it. And that we have the amount of people, and again, we're not breaking records here, but still, just from that little bit of promotion and word of mouth, that we've got the number of people listening that we do is very. It pumps me up, and it's got me excited for how we can keep building this thing and make it sustainable, because we don't want it to just be a one season and done, a one and done kind of thing. For me, it's something I hope that keeps going and going and gets bigger as we go along.
You mentioned Dad's a talker, and here I am calling him Dad too. Rick is a talker. He loves, you can tell just listening to the podcast, he loves to tell stories. But one of the things that's impressed me about Mast Cast right from the start, the first time I listened to it, is whether it's you or him, when you two start talking about a topic, certainly when it comes to when he used to race and just races back, in the 90s and the 80s or whatever it may be, both of you have incredible memories. How much easier has that made the show? The fact that whether you want to talk about something or he wants to bring something up, it's almost like it happened yesterday. You both can easily recall it.
Yeah, I'm blessed with, like my problem with my memory is like I can't remember simple day-to-day things or like stuff I'm supposed to do or like what I had for breakfast, that kind of thing. But I'm fortunate enough that I have like a really good memory as far as just old things that happened in the past and stories and that sort of thing. And Dad usually is pretty good. I mean, he's got a pretty good memory and knack for remembering that kind of stuff too. I mean, to put it into context, I mean, me growing up in the sport, literally, basically my first full memories, not just in sports or racing, but in life, happened when I was 4 years old, 1987, Dad's first Xfinity victory at Dover. I remember it pretty vividly. I remember there was the trophy lady in Victory Lane, whatever they were called back then. She had this. I mean, this is '87, so she had some like Bon Jovi, like White Snake, platinum blonde, poofed out hair, and something about her like scared me. I think I was crying while we were in Victory Lane because I thought the lady was going to attack me or something. But once I got beyond that, it was. I remember it's the first full memory I have in life, just because it was even at age 4. Somehow it just clicked with me that this was a big deal. This was a thing this was his first win, and it was a monumental occasion for us, for him and his career, and us as a family. And then the very next week, I have even more memories of the next week at Martinsville. He won again, and I remember much more about that one. So it's my whole childhood and growing up is littered with memories of NASCAR. I mean, I was very fortunate in that my parents, they sacrificed and went out of their way to make sure I could be at the racetrack almost every weekend. I would go to school Monday through Friday, and then they would somehow figure out a way for me to get to the track on Friday evening or Saturday. And I just want to point this out. This is going back before everybody had private planes and motorhomes and all that. I mean, this is the days we were still driving a lot of places that people would fly. I mean, and, we wouldn't be flying to Pocono or whatever. We're making the 5 or 6 hour drive or wherever. I mean, I think we drove to New Hampshire one time from Virginia and back. So The point is it wasn't just like there was a private plane there that they had the resources to put me on a commercial flight. I mean, they really had to sacrifice for me to be able to be there. And I'm so thankful for them for that, because man, the things I got to experience growing up and being at the racetrack every weekend. And it's because of that I have a lot of memories. Most of my childhood memories were somewhere at the infield at a racetrack. And then of course he has the stories because he was the guy actually out there doing it. So, and thankfully he's got a good memory of them, and it's fun. And what's neat is, I remember a lot of stuff, but then once we get to talking about something, one of us is talking about something, it'll trigger something in the other one to another memory that we hadn't thought about for a while. Or it's been really the coolest part for me has been he's told me some stories that, like, I thought I'd heard all his stories, right? But then we'll start recording something and he'll tell me a story I've never heard before. And it was cool. It's been happened once or twice where I've told him a story from the racetrack that he didn't realize had ever happened. Like when was this? A month ago or so, right after James Hilton passed away. I told a story about the time I met James Hilton at the racetrack, and he didn't realize that it ever happened. And so that's kind of been a fun thing. And then I'll tell you this, Kelly, like if nothing else, like if people stop listening to this show or to Mast Cast and it goes away or whatever, the one thing that I'll be most proud of that we did is that all Dad's stories, his recollections, his takes on the sport, but mostly his memories in the sport from his career are now on record somewhere, and they're in his voice, and they'll be there long after he's gone, I'm gone, whatever. Like, if anybody for some reason ever wants to just hear this one little tiny bit of history of this guy and his time in the sport, it's there, and it's from his perspective, and that's something I'm really proud of. My grandfather, his dad, who's no longer with us, he and I were very close. He passed away a few years ago, and one thing that I'm very thankful I did before he passed, he earned a Purple Heart in World War II in Battle of Okinawa. And as a kid, I always enjoyed hearing his stories about World War II, what that was like, and also growing up in the Great Depression and everything. I mean, his perspective on life and his stories were something I could listen to all day, and what I learned a lot from. It was really where I've gained a lot of my values from. But a few years before he passed, we had the opportunity he had a slight thing going on with his knee, I believe, that put him in the hospital for a few days. So I was just sitting there hanging out with him. I was like, we ought to get I'll go buy our tape recorder and we'll record all of your memories of the Depression, and I really want to get your stories from World War II. I mean, from lying about your age just to be able to sign up and then going and the whole deal. So I recorded all of that, and now that he's gone, I'm that much more thankful that I have his recorded history of his life and what he experienced. And so now with my dad, I feel in Mast Cast, I feel like that's something we've got there, is that no matter what happens with this show, his history is on record and not going away. So I'm most proud of that.
That's awesome. To that sense, I mean, podcast aside, was just you two sitting around talking racing and reminiscing about stuff? Was that something you guys just did in general? Because again, once you guys get going, and you said it earlier, you love just sitting around talking sports or talking racing. Was this something that you two were even doing before you decided to start the podcast?
A little bit, some. We didn't talk racing as much, but sometimes, if we were both, if I happened to be home and the race was on, yeah, we would talk a little bit about it. But it's honestly, we probably talk. No, you know what? We would just talk sports in general when I would be there and hanging out. But really, to me, this was another cool thing, or another reason I wanted to do it was, I mean, to your point was, I moved away from home from Virginia 3 years ago to take this job that I'm in now. And we have a close-knit family. I'm very close with my family. So the job was worth the move, and I love the job and I love being here, but not being able to see my family all the time like I've been accustomed to for basically my whole life, save for that 6-month stint in New York with the Fan Cave. I'd always lived right next door to lived with the family, and then once I was out of college, built a house right next door. So that separation was is difficult to deal with at times for me, and for them too, I'm sure. And so for me, this was another way for he and I to, through the magic of our modern day technology, something for just a father and son to be able to do together and stay connected. And it's on a personal side, no matter how each episode goes, for me, it's an hour or hour and a half that I really look forward to every week. I mean, it's just chatting with the old man. It's good. It's been, it's been what I'd hoped it would be. Just as something, he and I have always, he's my hero. My parents are my heroes, and we've always had a good relationship. But this was a way for us to do something special together that maybe we hadn't really done before, just a kind of a father-son project or whatever you want to call it. And it's been that, and it's been very, on all the other ways it's been rewarding. It's been most rewarding on that level. And again, the recorded history level.
Considering, going back to what you said about your memory, that you remember pretty much everything from Rick's career, at what point then, or did you even ever realize, wow, this is really, really cool that my dad's a race car driver? Did you ever have that appreciation? Did that ever strike you of just how cool it was?
Yeah, I think so. And I don't know when that clicked for me, but I think I realized it really early on in life that my dad had a job that was different from most kids' dads. And I'll tell you this: when I was growing up, as I was always extremely proud of him. And if anybody ever, like at school or whatever, asked me about stuff that was going on with him at the racetrack or his career, I would always answer. But in school and with my friends, I pretty much I never talked about it much, just because I never wanted to come off as like I was bragging somehow or something. I mean, I was always incredibly proud, but I really, at school and stuff, I hardly ever talked about his career. Now I knew, and maybe it was because in my soul I knew how cool this was, but I felt like if I talked about it much, that maybe I was gonna not. Like, I don't know. I just I thought maybe people would think I was cocky or arrogant or something. So I didn't talk about it much. And the ironic thing is, in the years since he's retired, and he's been retired, gosh, let's see, 16 years now. The further we get away from him having been in the sport, the more I find myself now like wanting to tell people and talk about it and bring it up. And I think it's just because he's been out of it for so long now that it's almost like I want people to know or realize or be aware of the fact that, man, what my dad managed to accomplish in life, and it was really something special and just very cool. So it's interesting how my perspective on that has changed, because every now and then I'll find myself like talking about him or telling some story about him to somebody, and like I'll have volunteered the story, and afterwards I wonder if these people, if I'm just annoying them with all this talk, or if they think I'm coming off as cocky about my dad or something. But then I'll have that instinctual thought, but then after that I'm just like, well, you know what, if they do, I don't really care, because I'm really proud of what he did. He never had the don't get me wrong, he had great car owners, he had great opportunities. He never had like a top tier ride, you would say, and he was never able to break through and get that elusive cup victory. But all that aside, I just want people to know how proud I am and how cool it was that he was at the top level of his profession in a very, very select group of people for over a decade. And that's something that I am extremely, extremely proud of, and that I'm very proud to talk about now, that's for sure, and will for the rest of my days.
I get it. I mean, you don't want to rub it in, but it is so cool. I mean, I never had anybody in racing that, on the family that I could talk about. But when I started getting into it, I became that kid that, okay, well, school projects I'm going to somehow incorporate racing. And when I was younger, I would bring in pictures of visiting racetracks. Like, that was me. But you're like, on one hand, it's like, yeah, you don't want to rub it in, but hey, this is cool. I want to share this.
Yeah, no, it was. I mean, it was, I remember, gosh, when he was driving for Remington in the 75 car at the time in 97 and 98, they had me come in, and I was in a couple TV commercials with him where it was like father son kind of stuff for Remington, and then like a hunting show and a fishing show. And like, I never told anybody, like I didn't tell anybody at school, I don't think, that I was in a TV, like a national TV commercial or anything, until finally one day somebody saw it. And then word got around, and I just kind of like sheepishly like, yeah, it was fun. But other than that, I was trying to, I mean, it was awesome. I was so pumped to get to do something like that. I was a terrible actor, by the way, and I remember the first commercial. My they had to record. I only had one line in the first commercial. It was me and Dad are duck hunting, right, somewhere on a boat, and all I had to do was say one line, and it was "Good shot, Dad." That's all I had to say. And I remember I was like 13 or so at the time, and in the midst of horrible puberty, where my voice was, I was basically sounded like a yodeler every time I talked. And they had to record me saying my one little 3-word line, like, I don't know, 10 times before it didn't sound like, it's shot, Dad. Like, it finally just came off to where they could use it. Little tangent there, but yeah, I mean,
I love it.
I just got to do it. Yeah, well, there's all these amazing experiences that I got to do, but I never ever wanted to flaunt it at around friends or at school or anything. It was just I on Monday through Friday, I just kind of wanted to be a normal kid, and then on the weekends I got to experience this really interesting life. And then honestly, by the time I got to high school, because I was pretty much at the racetrack every weekend. I don't remember this, but I have it on good authority that I went to my first race, I believe, at Franklin County Speedway when I was 6 days old. I think that's what I was told. And that was basically how I spent every weekend until I got to high school. And Dad was in the last few years of his career when I got to high school. And by that point, don't get me wrong, I still liked going. But I kind of at that point was ready to start staying home more on the weekends and just, going to the high school football game on Friday night. First they're really interested in girls and having a girlfriend and all of that kind of stuff. So I kind of, the last few years of his career, I started living a little bit more of a normal life. They would go to the races on the weekends, and I would stay back and kind of be normal, and then go a few times, or go sometimes, just not all the time. So overall it was an incredible way to grow up, and man, I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Going back to the podcast, when you and Dad aren't talking about stories from his career or maybe certain drivers, whatever it may be, you're recapping, the race that just happened, the previous weekend, action, storylines, things like that. So it sounds like, even though, again, you're in a completely different sport, living your life, Rick hasn't raced, as you mentioned, since 2002, but it sounds like you two both still follow the circuit.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we definitely do. I mean, even when, I'm working a lot on Sundays during the race, but I always have it DVR'd to watch and keep up with afterward. I mean, my goodness, this past Sunday at Chicagoland, like I was I didn't get to see it live, but man, it was an incredible race. I can't wait. Honestly, I'm really looking forward to our episode this week, because I know we're both all jacked up to talk about it, because man, what a great race that was. But yeah, we both.
I can't wait to hear it, because I want to see if Rick talks about, whether or not that was reminiscent of the good old days everybody's been talking about this week. So I can't wait to hear it too.
Yeah, well, I'll go and volunteer it. My opinion is, oh heck yes, that was better than some of the finishes we had. Not all of them, but than some of the finishes we had in the good old days. So I'm excited to talk about it. And yeah, we definitely both still keep up with it. And I mean, for him, he watches every race, and I do too, but he's always keeping up with it. The thing is, that was from the time he was a kid. He loved that sport. That was his life. He made it his life to make it in that sport. He loved it while he was there. It gave him everything he has and that we had as a family. And he still cares about it as much today as he ever has. And, he wants to see the sport flourish. He doesn't want to see the sport suffer or decline or anything like that. He loves it. He's always loved it. He will always love it, and he cares about it. And I do too, but there's no way I could ever sit here and tell you that it's like I can have that same passion for it like he does, just because, for the obvious reasons. I mean, he's the guy who was a driver and did all of that. So, but yeah, we both definitely are fully invested in the sport and watching it and hopefully seeing it grow. I mean, I think, you mentioned the old school racing, and he and I are both of old school philosophy and roots and thoughts and all of that. But I'm excited about a lot of things with where the sport is now, and the young talent that's rising up, and then the veterans, the group of veterans that are kind of at the front of the field right now. We might be witnessing something kind of special. We've got potentially with Harvick, Busch, Truex. I mean, I mean, we've got three, at least in those three, right? And I'm not purposely leaving anybody out. I'm just, those three happen to be the first off the top of my head. We got in my mind, three future Hall of Famers that are still up there and very much in their prime, battling it out with each other every week, and that's something we should probably appreciate a little bit more. Listen, I just got a coworker of mine for my birthday last week, got me my first Bubba Wallace hat, which I'm very excited about, and I'm going to get a Blaney hat at some point. I got some Chase gear. Like, I'm as excited about the young guys as anybody else. I want to see them start running well. Larson in there too, although he's already established himself, I think. But I'm still trying to, still want to remind people, it's like, hey, these guys, the established guys, the older guys are pretty darn good, and we should be excited about what they're doing right now as well. And I left off Jimmy off that list, but he's still, as far as I'm concerned, he's still got another title run in him too. So it's talent-wise, racing-wise, I think we got a lot of good things going on right now. I know there's a lot to complain about out there, but I'm maybe this is the Pete positive in me, as I referenced earlier, but I'm excited about the potential of the sport's future.
Well, I did want to ask that because having grown up in the sport, having seen it evolve so much, what are some of the things today that get you excited? I mean, you just mentioned all the young guys, but what are some of the other things that keep you watching the sport? I mean, because again, you could very easily have given up on it and said, "Hey, I'm going to focus on baseball. I'm going to focus on other stuff. I don't need to watch. Dad's not racing," but you do. What is it about the sport that you still enjoy?
I think, first of all, the racing itself, I still enjoy. I mean, I think, listen, I'm always going to be the old school guy just because of the era I grew up in, that my dad was involved. I'm always going to be partial to that, but I do, to be completely fair, I think sometimes we romanticize the good old days a little bit, in that we think every finish and every race that ever happened back then was just this incredible down to the wire thing. And I'm here to tell you, there weren't. There were some stinkers back then. We probably have more close finishes now than we did back in the quote-unquote good old days. Now, listen, I can't sit here and tell you that anything can ever be as cool again as Dale Earnhardt Sr. in his prime, and like the 92 season of the King on his way out, Davey and Allen and Bill and the title battle, and then the rise of Jeff Gordon, and the personalities involved. Then you got like the Bodine brothers and the Jimmy Spencers of the world and the Wallaces. I mean, it was a crazy cool time to be in the sport. I don't know that you can ever match that again. But at the same time, there's some pretty darn good personalities out there now. Whether you love him or hate him, Kyle Busch is perfect for this sport right now, because you need people like that, where half the people, I see it on Facebook, my friends are NASCAR fans. I got a couple on there that are diehard Rowdy fans, and they love him, and they'll go to the ends of the earth to defend him. And then on the other end, there's people that are in the comments on their Rowdy Busch posts of the Rowdy fans that just hate the guy. And it's great. And Rowdy, what he did the other day, with the crying thing, I loved it. I loved it.
Fantastic.
If you're going to be you need a villain. You just, in storylines, entertainment, sports, whatever, you need a villain. But to have a good villain, it's got to be a villain that owns the role and seems to relish in it, and he does, and he owns it. I loved that. I thought that was great. I thought that the sportsmanship that he and Larson showed each other afterward was awesome and perfect. I mean, that was just, you couldn't ask for anything better than that. So I watch a race like that, and I'm thinking, man, we're in good hands right now. Listen, I'm not sure that we can ever reach as far as the attendance, I don't know that it's ever possible to reach the levels we had in the 90s, just because my goodness, there's just so many more options for entertainment and things that keep people occupied throughout the day or in their leisure time, that's just, there's so many things out there that I think we maybe focus on that a little bit too much at times. So I'm really excited. I'll tell you, I was really excited about the fact that race happened at Chicago, at one of the bigger tracks like that we so often, and I'll be the first to raise my hand. I'm guilty of the 2 mile and a half tracks. Just have me enough. Come on, give me Iowa, somehow build some grandstands and upgrade South Boston, put it on there, which I would love to see, or Nashville. But if we can have that kind of racing at Chicago and places like that, then we're going to be okay.
That old worn out surface, a slick day, tire falling off. I mean, I never would have thought we've seen that from Chicago, but all of those ingredients came together. And I said it on Twitter. I've said it to people who I've talked to in person over the last couple days, that was probably the best mile and a half race we've had this year, if not in recent memory the last couple years.
It's the best one I can remember in quite a while. Yeah, I mean, I without sitting down and really studying it, I tell you, nothing comes to mind. I mean, that was incredible. So
And not just because of the finish. I thought the race from start to finish was really good. Going back to what I said before, I mean, the tire fall off, people coming through the field, dropping through the field, the fact that there was passing, which, as you know, we always talk about in the sport. We need more passing, going, oh, it's a mile and a half, it's 2 miles, there's going to be no action. We had all of that on Sunday, and it was fantastic.
it completely was, and it's and I mean, you got him at slide job. Hey, could you have had anything more perfect for Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s debut as a broadcaster in the booth than that? I mean, my
That was
Lord.
amazing.
And then just seeing, like, because I mean, I'm, in social media, I'm constantly on social media and seeing what's going on, and just seeing the impact that not only that finish, but his debut as a broadcaster, and that in his debut, he has something, a catchphrase basically that's gonna live on for a while. That was man, I look at that race Sunday, just overall, the racing itself throughout the race was great. The finish was amazing. You had Dale Jr. in the booth making his debut and doing it very well, I might add. That to me is like, it got me fired up. Like, to me, it's like a springboard. Okay, we got the second half. The NBC's now taking over. Fox did a great job. NBC's got the second half. It's like, to me, all right, the second half is here, and it got me pumped up and fired up to see how we're going to go for the rest of the way.
Oh, I completely agree. The fact that Dale Jr. is such a fan, and he mentioned it on a Periscope he did after the race was over, talking about, his first weekend in the booth. He hit on it. He's like, man, I just love racing, and now I get paid to watch races. And that to me is what's going to make him shine at NBC, and what's going to make NBC stand out is the fact that you have somebody up there who, fresh out of the race car, just loves racing so much, and that he's not going to hide his excitement. And Steve Letarte does a great job at analyzing a race, and Jeff Burton does a great job analyzing a race from a driver perspective. But the excitement that Dale Jr. is going to bring, just because he genuinely is thrilled with what he's seeing on the racetrack, that to me again is where this broadcast team is going to stand out.
Absolutely. And you can't fake that kind of enthusiasm. You can try, but people will see through it, and you have to have it. And that's for any sport. I mean, I work in baseball, and I can, if you're going to be involved in baseball, then or whatever sport it is, in my opinion, for you to do your job the best that it can be done, you better have a love for that sport. I mean, you just better. You better really care about it and be enthusiastic about it and be happy to show up at the ballpark or the track or wherever it is every day, and whatever your role is. If not, you can fake it, and maybe you can do okay, and you can do an okay job, and you can get by. But I'm telling you, it's just the job itself can only be done at its best by somebody that's actually passionate about the sport. It's just, as far as I'm concerned, there's no other way, and that's evident with Dale Jr. I mean, he's not just sitting there yelling slide job, being an actor or anything. I mean, he was fired up for that finish, and that completely came through. That's why it's been resonating with people in the days since, because that's real. That's real, raw emotion, and that's not just NASCAR. That's what it takes if to be in sports in general, but especially the broadcasting side of it. Absolutely.
No, I agree. And again, I can't wait to hear you and Rick talk about it this week. So a few more things for you before we wrap up. I got to ask, because you hit on something just a few minutes ago, and it's so timely now, ironically, that we're doing this for a second time, but it's so timely with what happened Sunday in Chicago. You hit on the fact that so many people talk about what we, quote unquote, the good old days, and they kind of romanticize it a little bit. But I got to ask, when it comes to the personalities of the sport and just what it was like back then. I mean, was it as cool as people make the 80s and the 90s out to be? I mean, from your perspective, growing up in the sport, seeing the Waltrips and the Wallaces, the Pettys, your dad, Earnhardt, just everybody, so many names.
Yes.
Was it as cool as people make it out to be?
Yes, it was. It really was. I mean, the personalities we had back then were pretty incredible. I mean, it's Dale Earnhardt Sr. is just the ultimate personality of all time, as far as I'm concerned. But you start, like I referenced, like Bo Dines and Jimmy Spencer and Rusty, and Awesome Bill. I mean, it's just the collection you had, and I'm leaving off like 20 names that I'm gonna. Kyle, Sterling. I mean, my goodness, just the
Yeah,
Labonis. There's just it was
I'm
just
sure I left off some names.
yeah, and I'm gonna kick myself because I want to I literally want to sit here and name off like all 35 guys that were there every week. But yeah, heck yes, it was very cool, and there was it was. I'm glad that that's the era I was around, that I got to be in the garage area for, that I got to at least meet Dale Earnhardt Sr. a couple times, and the King and all that. Like it was just you talk about things you can't fake with enthusiasm stuff. You can't fake coolness either, and there were just a lot of guys in that garage area back then. And again, you had more of those personalities where people, you either loved or hated them. I don't know if we have as many of those now. Maybe that's part of the coolness factor, is you had more polarizing figures. I don't know. I mean, I'm just kind of speculating and wondering now, but to be in it, yeah, I don't know if I realized at the time how cool it was. I mean, again, I was a kid. I don't know if I realized how quote unquote cool the personalities were, but I look back at it and I'm like, gosh, it was so cool to be around it then. I mean, it really was. That's one thing I'm not even romanticizing, that I can say, yeah, those guys, those mixtures of personalities in that time was very, very cool.
So let's go back to the podcast wrap up here with a few more things. I'm smart enough to not ask when the podcast drops every week because, again, being a fan of the podcast, it really is when you and Rick can get together. But tell everybody where they can find Mast Cast and just kind of I'll let you promote it.
Yeah, so I always tell people the best place is iTunes. You subscribe to us, just search Mast Cast, subscribe to us on iTunes, and of course, leave a positive review and the 5-star review and all that good stuff. But iTunes is always option number one. Stitcher, I know a number of people listen through Stitcher. I know I have one guy that tweeted us that he listens through Castbox. I mean, the thing is, I'm still not knowledgeable enough to know that all the different podcast apps that are out there. As I understand it, it's on a lot of them, if not most of them. So there's that. If you want to go, if you're not in the app route, then you can go to mastcast.org, and all the episodes are available there as well. So, but yeah, I think iTunes is the best way, or whatever your podcast app is. Just search Mast Cast, and it should pop up there.
Hey, I'm the same way. People still tweet me and they're like, "Hey, I saw your podcast on this, app," and I have it on iTunes. I have, the Racing Writers podcast on iTunes. I'm hoping to get it on YouTube one day if I could figure out how to do that. But yeah, I'm the same way. People tell me all the time, "Hey, I saw it here," and I'm just like, "Hey, I know it's on iTunes. I know it's on SoundCloud, and hopefully eventually I can figure out, how to get it somewhere else."
Yeah. There's just there's a zillion options out there, and I'm the same way. I know that there's some other venues I need to get the show on, and that's all in the plans. It's just work schedule makes it a little difficult sometimes, but yeah, it's there's a lot of venues out there for podcasts. And what a great thing, that we can do this, and we all have an outlet. If we have something to say, that we have an outlet that allows us to say it.
All right, so Ricky Mast, what have you got going on? You've mentioned the podcast. Hopefully got some good things you guys can do down the road. We're recording this July 3rd. I'm hoping to have it out later tonight or tomorrow going to July 4th. What have you got? Any good plans coming up for the rest of the week?
Well, let's see. The Braves just beat the Yankees for the first game of a 3-game series last night. We've won 4 in a row. So I'd like to, first of all, the very short-term future, I'd like to keep that winning streak going tonight. So there's that. But in the near future, like I said, I'm very excited to go see the family for about a week and a half. We're going to go to the beach. I'm going to buy a bushel of crabs one night, and we're going to sit outside by the beach on a picnic table, eat crabs, and drink beer. I'm very excited about that. Career-wise, I'm very excited for the second half of the baseball season. Got some other irons in the fire that I'm pretty excited about. That shouldn't have even brought it up because I can't publicly say it yet. But got some other things that I'm hoping to reveal in the next month or two that I'm really excited about career-wise. So a lot going on. I mean, and it's all good things. Mast Cast is doing well and having a blast with Dad. By the way, he's at Rick Mast 22 on Twitter. I'm at Ricky Mast. Shameless plug. And then the Braves are playing well, and so I'm loving my job. I mean, life is just really, really good right now. So I'm, I don't have any groundbreaking news here other than just to say that life is good for me, and I'm very appreciative of it.
That sounds good. Well, I have good news and I have a little bit of bad news, Ricky Mast. So the good news is we made it through another podcast for the second time.
Oh, it was even better this time. We nailed it this time.
Oh, I hope so. I hope so. But here's a little bad news. I was so excited to get rolling, and I have my new program going so we could record this over Skype, that I forgot to hit the button in the first few minutes. So I missed maybe like the first few minutes of our conversations. But as your Twitter profile says, as you mentioned, at Ricky Mast, you are a really nice guy on the internet. So I appreciate you recording it on your end. And this is my, shameless asking of you to send me the audio when we're done so I could get the first part of our conversation.
I will. I'll ship it to you right away as soon as I can, for sure.
Well, I appreciate that. I did hit record eventually, but I think I missed maybe the first few minutes of our conversation. But again, Ricky Mast was the guest. He is a really nice guy on the internet. Follow him on Twitter. His dad at Rick Mast. What is it? Rick Mast 22? Did you say?
Rick Mast 22. Yep.
Mast Cast on iTunes. Can't wait for that to come out. And hey, let's get out of here. Let's get going on with the rest of the day. We'll shut this thing down. And I appreciate it. Again, I'm gonna say it again. Second time, folks, that he did this in the last couple days. So I appreciate it so much.
Kelly, I'm looking forward to the third time already. Had so much fun. Thank you for having me.
We'll definitely have to do it again a third time, but maybe we'll get that one right from the start.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you, Ricky.
Thanks, Kelly.